All right, good morning, everyone. This is Bonnie Watson with the Telluride Foundation. Welcome to the Southwest Colorado Business Update Call. You'll notice that we have a nice facelift this morning. We're really excited to bring on Civic Canopy to help us with administering these calls, and they've just done a fantastic job. Their team does really great work, so we're just excited to have them on board. And thank you for all your work in doing this. So today's call is much like the other calls that we've had. So we'll have about 40 minutes from presenters to present on tourism this week. And then we'll have a 20-minute Q&A at the end. As always, this call is being broadcast and it is being recorded. So you will have access to that recording afterwards. And again, I will be sending a follow-up email with all of the information from this call today and any applicable resources for you. That email is coming from MailChimp. So please check your spam folder. I know a lot of folks have had some issues with that. And then you can reach out directly to our email as well if you have any further questions. One update that I'm sure many people are aware of, as of Thursday, April 16th, the SBA announced that the initial $349 billion PPP fund has been fully exhausted. We are still advising folks to make sure that they're gathering payroll documents and continuing to prepare your applications while Congress deliberates on additional funding. And if you've already submitted your PPP application, your lender can update you about the status of that application. In addition to PPP being exhausted on Thursday, April 16th as well, the SBA announced that it is unavailable to accept new applications based on available appropriation funding. The idle applicants who have already submitted their applications will continue to be processed on first come, first served basis. The SBA cannot guarantee that applications submitted thus far will be receiving funding. Additional idle funding is contingent upon congressional appropriations. So we'll just stay tuned there. We are hopeful that Congress will approve additional funding for this, and it's just kind of a waiting game at this point. So with that being said, we're super excited to have a tourism focus today. We understand that that's obviously a big need for especially folks in the southwest corner of Colorado, as well as the Northwest. We're excited to have Matt Skinner today he's the CEO of Colorado Flight Alliance on the call. We also have Darcy Perkins with ICE Lab and the Gunnison County Economic Task Force. We have Tim Waldsworth with the Durango Business Improvement District and Scott Shine with the City of Durango and La Plata County Economic Recovery Task Force. And then we're also going to be hearing from Greg Olson today with the Growl Agency in Grand Junction, Colorado for strategies for small businesses to stay connected with their audience. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Matt Skinner. Are you there, Matt?
I was just about to say, I can't see any video, Bonnie, but oh, there I am. So good. Hey, again, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Was hoping I could see the 20 or 100 other faces on here, but that might be a little tough. Sure, I know a lot of you and just appreciate everybody's efforts over the last month as things have changed so dramatically and so quickly. And, you know, with that, and really, I think a lot of the conversations from this group and the ones that we've been involved in here recently have how to plan for the future. You know, obviously very difficult, a large moving target, but I think the thing that encourages me is how that has evolved. You know, we're very much focused on health. We're very much focused on saving lives as it gets put to us by our county, and very much in support mode for all of those organizations currently. But what we've recently seen is definitely a change in tenor to that, to forward thinking, forward planning from every level. And I think that all of you are probably inundated with information, mailers. I love it though. It's from our own state representatives, from our federal level representatives, from our governors, et cetera. And hopefully we can find our way through this, and especially with the help of groups like this, to use these resources and use each other the best that we can. Kat had actually asked me today to talk on a state level, and I'm happy to talk to anybody anytime, as you know, from here from the Telluride and Montrose area perspective, as best I can on individual items. As I think all of everybody knows right now, and this is a couple weeks old, it might be an eternity, the governor created his Economic Stabilization and Growth Council very quickly following the shutdowns of the ski resorts and others, shelter and then stay-at-home mandates. And with that, created 9 committees to support and speak up to it. And I serve on the tourism committee to that emergency council. Richard Sharp is chairing out of Denver, and really was about 2.5 weeks ago, very quick acting. We put together a document from the tourism industry specifically about what our critical needs are, what the recommendations are, and an overview, honestly, of an early estimated economic impact, which was pretty dramatic. Just to run through it quickly, I think I was just supposed to be on for 5 minutes and glad to take questions. You know, the thing was really focused on first supporting businesses, making sure that they don't fail, and supporting the employees associated with those businesses. You know, where can we create and loosen up cash flow for people? How do we keep employees whole? And this is meant to dovetail with federal programs, of course, that have already been rolled out as well. There's even questions about accessing TABOR funds in the state, and pushing that even further for this group that might be relevant into talking to insurance carriers about extending business interruption service, which does not currently apply in most cases, to help that. One thing I have to throw in here to lighten the mood today, one of the bullets in this section was to continue to extend suspension of home alcohol delivery. And I loved how that made it all the way to the top of the critical needs for our state. And I like that the tourism industry was keeping a little bit of its core fun involved there. Back to the seriousness, though. Next, top line mandates for leading collaboration. This is from the CTO and state levels, is that when we do come out of this, that there's some top-down resources and coordination of messaging. So we're not just all firing off on different tangents, but there is a core state message that comes out that we can use, not use, umbrella up to, or however we would like to, but that there will be that structure as a state to reestablish our place in the tourism industry, the tourism marketplace as we go. Dovetailed with that again, or leading from that, is a additional amount of funding for the Colorado Tourism Office. This will all, of course, be staged as we emerge from the pandemic. Nothing is in action right now as everything has been paused, but in a nice update, a recent update from the governor, the CTO has been commissioned to create a plan, be ready, so when the flag drops, that we're all ready to get out there. And I think that's what a lot of the conversations are evolving to right now, is that next step piece of let's be ready. We're not being insensitive, and we're still dedicated 100% to health, but it's time. I've seen some great surveys from different towns. I've seen the beginnings of some plans about what to do. And I think that there'll be a natural phasing. As we know, the governor has his 3 phases. I think all of our destinations have different phases of how we're going to manage this, obviously getting to new protocols of tourism, how then we get back to business, how then we slowly phase that out into our marketplaces from local to regional, eventually to national and international, and making sure that we have short and long-term views in sight for that. One small side piece to this is that in the recommendation up to the governor as well, in the next phase of support from the feds, they're heavily advocating for 501c6 organizations to be included in that, which mine is, and I think a lot of yours may be as well. And so that will also be some welcome relief as we do try to get this ball going. There might be some funding actually to help augment that. There's obviously a ton of information going ahead. The feedback we got following was that the governor was wide open to these points. There's obviously a lot more detail in the actual report, that they made it into the executive report that went up to him. He's broken them out into local, state, and federal pieces and pushing each of those into their different sectors to try to help ensure some success. And that he's very much focused on both business solvency as well as jobs as we move forward. And as the last piece of this goes, and then I don't know if I have my 5 minutes already blown up. I was on a call with this council this morning that was all focused very much on health with the epidemiologist from the state, who, by the way, did a fantastic job and inspired quite a bit of confidence from me in just the way that she handled both the information and the questions. We know that the governor came out with his 3 phases a couple days ago, and they're right at a crux point with the stay and shelter in place orders and whether or not we flatten the curve. They're hoping to have that information by next week. And they are creating plans and talking about the phasing back to business within the scope of that. Have we actually flattened the curve to a point that our medical facilities can handle the projections going forward? And with that, will then we start to see some loosening of those orders with both stay at home and going back to business? They would not obviously provide anything concrete. They need 5-6 more days, they say, to see where they are on this curve. It could be longer, but then we should have an update. And so there is some view to that flag starting to drop here in the not too distant future, depending, of course, 100% on how that arc is going and how they can manage that critical piece of all of this. Hopefully some of this was new. I'm sure a lot of you have already been involved in these conversations. And again, glad to answer questions here or from our granular level at any time.
Thanks, Matt. We appreciate that. And folks, if you have a question, I failed to mention this, but at the bottom of your screen there is the Q&A function in Zoom that you can submit a question for Matt or any of our presenters that we'd be happy to ask. And we have disabled chat at this point, so just that Q&A function is available. Thanks, Matt. We appreciate it. Darcy, the floor is all yours.
Well, hi, everyone. Matt, thank you for that great update. I was glad to hear that some maybe funding for 501c6 organizations may be on the way. I want to thank everyone for having me today. And I also want to thank all of you who are on this call, who are business owners, for being here. My name is Darcy Perkins, and I work for the Tourism and Prosperity Partnership, which is responsible for both tourism marketing and economic development in Gunnison County. So you can imagine the pickle we find ourselves in at the moment. The ICE Lab is a co-working space and entrepreneurial hub that serves Gunnison County businesses on campus at Western Colorado University. And like everyone in Southwest Colorado, Gunnison's economy is so closely tied to tourism. So what I've been asked to share with you today are two things. One is an infrastructure that we've put in overnight. And the second thing is a mindset that Gunnison County is trying to embrace. Next slide, please. So the infrastructure in which we have just constructed overnight is based on the principles of bottom-up hierarchy, which is known to be so important to startups, that allows them to be innovative and agile. And the ICE Lab, we recognized immediately that every business in our valley was going to need to learn how to be flexible and agile to survive this. So over 750 businesses have self-subscribed to participate in this process, and it's represented by 9 subgroups, and I listed the 9 subgroups on this slide for you to see. These subgroups are led by business owners, and a task force of over 29 elected public officials and influencers in our community have come together to serve as the task force. The role of the task force is to bring expertise and influence to the agencies, state and federal, to help our community through this. So how it's working in a nutshell is each subgroup is meeting once a week by a Zoom call. So there's 9 subgroups meeting once a week. And in those meetings, we are bringing information to the businesses that they need. We've had sessions about the EIDL loans, the PPP, what they needed, we got them guest speakers for. And also they're telling us what their questions are, what their needs are, and then we're taking those questions to the task force and directly to our health director who's doing the health orders. So we can get fast clarity on what it means when a new health order comes out. As a leader of a subgroup and a facilitator, we are connected by Slack, where we're able to quickly share the latest information. For example, the PPP funds running out, we were able to get that out fast. And the leaders and the facilitators can send out emails to these 750 businesses instantly. The last piece, and next slide, please. The last piece of this infrastructure is we created a new website. The website, I'm showing you 2 pictures here. The business resource tab on the county website is new. The first tab has all kinds of information that would apply to many businesses, not just one, but then each subgroup has its own website. And on that subgroup page, We are sharing the videos of all the meetings. So if somebody can't make it but needs that information, they can find it here. We have the meeting minutes and the agendas so people know who's coming as a guest speaker and if it applies to them. The task force responses. So any question we've elevated to the task force is available for viewing. It's in a spreadsheet form, the question, the answer. Any question for our health director, how does this apply to my business, or can we do this, can we do that? The answers are recorded in the Q&A for each subgroup. And now we're trying to step out of this together. This is just the beginning. We are starting as subgroups, the businesses are creating their own reopen documents. Those documents are working closely to go back and forth between the health director and the emergency command to step out of this in phases. And we are adopting Governor Polis's language, the urgent phase, the stabilization or stabilizing phase, and the recovery phase. And what you can do as a business in those phases, we're starting to draft those documents. Last slide, please. And the last thing I want to talk about is the mindset piece and the emotional piece that has been so important through COVID for our businesses. First of all, I think the businesses feel as if they have a choice to lead and help in this process and are not just victims, but are participating in the recovery process. Early on in the first few weeks, it was critical that businesses accept what COVID is giving them. Those businesses that accepted that they were going to be closed were able to creatively think beyond and started finding incredible ideas to save their business. The businesses that fought it and argued that they shouldn't have to close, they didn't move forward. So we quickly, and the leaders were part of this, tried to get everyone to accept COVID, that it was happening. We couldn't change that, but together we have to think differently and we will survive. That rapid two-way communication has been instrumental in helping relieve anxiety and also get the information out there as fast as possible. We are now working on this unified approach piece where we're trying to, as a community, adopt the same languages. We're using Governor Polis's language for many of this, and all the businesses are starting to talk about, okay, what can we do in the stabilizing phase? And before that, we were struggling. Everyone was using different words for where we were headed, and we're still developing this. This is not done yet, but unifying our language and trying to get on the same page as we move forward. And the last piece about the mindset of this is Gunnison County is planning on not having second homeowners and visitors this summer. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but that's what we're planning for. And the first phase of this planning is for a local resident reopen only. And I think the point here is, not to be the bearer of bad news or the doomsayer, but if we plan to reopen only for locals and we get to have our second homeowners back and we get to have tourists back, we're going to be okay. And so we're planning for the worst, hoping for the best. And I'm happy to answer any questions, or you can reach out to me by email at any time.
Thanks so much, Darcy, and thank you so much for all your work there. Great. Tim, I'm going to pass the floor over to you. Tim, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay, sorry, wrong mute button. My bad. So my name's Tim. I run the Durango Business Improvement District. I'm here with Scott Shine from the city of Durango, and we're both on the La Plata County Economic Recovery Task Force. And we'll tell you a little bit about this task force and how it formed. Scott will give some information on how the task force is supporting businesses and some of our best practices, and we'll share some successes and challenges with you. And so you guys might recall 2 summers ago, we had the 416 fire right north of Durango. And at that time, all the business organizations that are a part of this task force today got together. Great collaboration, great partnerships. We created a website that housed all the resources of how to get help and how to give help. And so I would have never thought I would have said we were lucky to have that 416 fire, but when the current situation happened, we were able to turn on the same kind of structure very quickly. And so we have a really broad coalition of business organizations, nonprofits, and local government. So our city, our county, 4 chambers of commerce, tourism office, restaurant association, economic development district, the Indian tribe, Southern Ute Indian tribe, community foundation, my organization, and more. We've all been meeting very regularly for the past 5-6 weeks. We reactivated our website. You see a little screenshot of it right here, and we tweaked it to fit the current situation. We focused immediately on some advocacy efforts, local, state, and national, and pushed some recommendations up to our city leadership for sales tax deferral, free parking for the takeout for restaurants, things like that. And we've been, like everyone else has been saying so far, we've really now pivoted to focus more on reopening and recovery. And because we have all these different groups on our team, we've got a lot of ideas. And Scott, will you talk to us about how we're supporting local businesses?
Thanks, Tim. Let's see. Great. So as Tim said, we had a great structure already in place based on the 416 fire, and we were able to get that up and running really quickly. We used that to kind of launch some reaction to the initial shutdown, and that was really focused on understanding the federal stimulus programs, disseminating information and resources to the local business community. We did 2 different webinars on PPP and the other funding sources for local businesses. And from the city side, we've been doing some advocacy to influence state and federal legislation. So that was sort of the initial reaction phase of getting our heads around what was happening. And then we've moved into more of a response and then starting to step into reopening recovery. And with that, I really liked the idea of a mindset in the community. We've tried to shift from this total dependence and reliance on outside resources. What are the feds going to do for us? What are we going to get from the state? And started to say, what resources do we have locally that we can tap into, that we can really get out to empower business owners? And so we, in the task force, have engaged with a network of small business consultants, even business owners that have some unique information to share. And we have a set of how-to videos that are sort of like a in the meantime series for business owners, where they can watch these videos. They get one clear task to do one day for the rest of the month. And we're sort of pushing that out to those small business owners to inspire hope and still have them taking action to bounce back from this, hopefully stronger and in a better position. So that we feel like has been very important to engage local experts and try and build on the assets that we have in our community. We've done a number of other things related to small business support. And if you go to the next slide here, you can see on the website how we've organized that. And I invite you all to go look at some of those resources. I won't go over them all in detail, but we're happy to answer questions about those. As I said, now getting the structure in place and starting to do response. We had an initial meeting to talk about reopening and recovery on Wednesday. That was facilitated by Downtown Colorado Inc., which a lot of you have probably worked with. And partners with DOLA and other communities throughout Colorado. And we had people come together and start to put out ideas about how to structure a reopening plan. And we had a lot of real similar ideas to what the ICE Lab just shared. And it's encouraging to see us thinking along the same lines as far as breaking it down by sectors and engaging the actual business community in developing this. This is not a detached group of either city officials or business representatives, but it's actually the owners themselves creating these strategies. And I guess I would just wrap up my section with some suggestions on best practices for those of you in different communities, maybe other than Gunnison and La Plata County that you're hearing from today. I've been really inspired and encouraged by the willingness to collaborate and sort of the breaking down of silos that this is causing. And if there is a silver lining, I think that's really going to be it, that we are coalescing around sort of the need to care for each other during this time, not to advance personal agendas, but really to help seek out what's best for the community. As a local government official, I'm really encouraged that we're being forced to innovate and sort of reevaluate the structures that we've had in place for a long time. And I think for business owners that are on this call, I think you should understand that opportunity to go to your local government and propose new ideas, get them engaged in thinking about to incrementally reopening and what are the barriers to that and how local government can be a partner in that instead of a burden. So overall, a lot of work still to be done, obviously a lot of uncertainty, but we have a great foundation to work from in La Plata County. So push it back to Tim, and I'm happy to take questions at the end.
Yeah, so thank you, Scott. I think couple of other thoughts. You know, as we're starting to think about reopening and the recovery, we're really trying to work very closely and hand in hand with our public health department and those officials. We do not want to give them the impression that we're telling them when we want to reopen, although of course that's right now, but we just realize there's other things that we have to work into the mix. And so we're just being very careful how we're having those discussions. And really we're involving healthcare in those discussions. So when we have an idea, could we do X? Could we do Y? Healthcare folks that can help us understand the ramifications of those things are right there with us. So I think that's an important part of your own recovery efforts. And then lastly, to kind of echo what Scott was saying, you know, for businesses that are on this call, organizations like mine and your chambers and the tourism offices, like you should be expecting the most ever from them right now. And I think that's hopefully what you're getting and what you're seeing. But this is the time where those places you're members of or you belong to, that they prove their worth to you. And so when you have concerns, you need to go to them and start to get it figured out, right? Just like Scott said, expect more from your local government. They want to help and they can be more nimble than perhaps traditionally how they are. And then lastly, for the business serving organizations that are on this call, like mine, you know, all those ideas that you've had that you never got implemented because it wasn't the right time, you didn't have enough staff, too busy, whatever, like now is the time to pull those things back off the shelf when you're in this recovery phase, because we need really, really, really creative thinking to figure it out. And then that collaboration, super important. Government, nonprofit, business groups, we all got to be on the same page. So that's all we had for you today. Thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Tim and Scott, thank you so much for being on the call today. I did want to point out La Plata, Scott just mentioned the La Plata playbook that they put together, and essentially the county has resourced all of the information out there about the CARES Act and put it into a nice, I think 20, 30 page document. And it's very easy to read. They've done a very nice job on it. We've shared that on the Southwest Business Recovery Facebook page, as well as on our Google Drive. And I really urge you to check it out because it really is very, very well done. With that being said, I'm excited to introduce Greg Olson with the Growl Agency in Grand Junction, Colorado, to talk to us about strategies for small business to stay connected with their audience. So with that being said, Greg, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Matt and Darcy and Tim and Scott, really, really great points. These are things that are very relevant around what we're seeing. Growl Agency, we're a marketing and technology company. We have office Grand Junction, Denver, and Vietnam. We've worked with the economic kind of development over the last 10 years and different communities and government entities across the United States. Our passion is in seeing how these, how do we get restarted? And I think I heard, I think it was Scott or talking about response, reopening, and recovery. So I thought what we'd do is just kind of walk through a few slides, and I have some examples that I'll talk about. Not really so much to say, hey, how to do social media better or how to do email better. I think everybody's probably working on that, but maybe we have some examples. So you can probably go to my next slide. I call it adapting to the new economy. I think it should really be called adapting to the unknown economy, and why we just really don't know what's going to happen. We listen to the governor, we listen to the feds, and we're all real confused about when it's going to reopen and what it's going to take. So it's really, we've been having all these discussions about now what's happening with virtual tourism. And I really want people to consider the different things that are happening to start getting the word out, and how you can still keep your brand front and center. When we go to the next slide. So as we think about these things and the conversations I'm having with different entities and chambers and local communities across the country, we're all having those same discussions. Now we have social distancing we have to be concerned with. Wearing masks is going to be something. We're sanitizing everything. There's hand washing stations are the new water cooler, it seems like. And so as we start to think about what that means, I mean, I think we're going to come back online, and how do we plan for this? Well, I think we should plan for knowing that there's going to be social distancing and there could be mask wearing. I mean, I'm just trying to be what we're trying to foreshadow and pick out language from the state and from the feds about what they're trying to say without trying them to create any panic. So what we're starting to see is people starting to market more regionally versus these kind of tourism dollars where we used to market maybe to Texas or Minnesota or Oklahoma or wherever. I think now what we're seeing is people are starting to market in these concentric rings out from their communities to maybe think about day trips and trying to attract people in as we really plan for the unknown. We're seeing brand ambassadors start to be created. And what we mean by that is past consumers, visitors that people have lists of. They're reaching out to them because everybody's home now. We have this work from home, this WFH, hashtag WFH that everybody's talking about. And so people are home and they're more readily available for some kind of survey or fun engagement or things like that. So we're seeing people reach out to really, hey, do you want to share any stories of your last visit here? And, what did you love about visiting Durango or Grand Junction or Telluride? And if you share, we want to be part of our brand ambassador team and you'll get 10% off your next visit or whatever the kind of call to action is. We're seeing snail mail come back too as people engage with certain things. I know it's a little hard, not really, but we're seeing a lot of people create buffs, those little things you pull over your face, and branded pieces that they're sending out calls to action. You can be involved in this and get these parts. I think there's tricks in that, and if your brand is relevant for that, you'll start to see what that looks like. The next thing is if we go to safety and cleaning policies seems to be front and center in the future. About people want to know they're going to be safe, and how do you clean your Airbnb, how do you clean your certain elements and stuff like that. I want to go to my next slide. So we look at engagement, and I'm going to go kind of quickly. I had about 5 minutes, I was told, so maybe they know I can talk a lot. We looked at things, what examples I have. I wanted to kind of share some different things I'm starting to see. So one is virtual wine and food pairings. And so groups are actually having these, whether it's YouTube or Facebook Live, or where they can send actually wine to them and saying, hey, here's how you make a steak. They're pairing up with a chef. and are actually doing these online food pairings and virtual wine tastings. I think it's really something that probably will continue, but what a great way to engage people who are stuck at home. I've actually participated and learned quite a bit. Zoom backgrounds, we're all seeing thousands of them. Who knew that was going to be so popular? And but we're seeing businesses create their own. As you can see behind me, I have a little Visit Grand Junction one our team created, just to keep it interesting. I have a sofa and a really non-interesting art behind me, so I'm glad I have it up. So things like coloring books, things that kids can do and families can do that are online and downloadable. We're seeing playlists created on Spotify. These are all free things people can do, and then people engage with your brand. Again, we've been talking a little bit about like brand ambassadors. I want to bring up Durango does a great job, and I was on a call this morning with a Fruita Chamber and your online store on what you're doing, and maybe you'll have some comments on that if we have time. But Durango Business Improvement District really did a great job of creating this online store to share the love, share the love Durango. And again, there's communities that are looking at doing this to really support their local businesses. And so I can see that being turned on. We're seeing these do-it-yourself kits. So a lot of these entities, there's a group in Fruita, Colorado, where I live, Raspberry Hill Boutique. They're having a ladies' night in event where they're going to have a Zoom meeting, and they're delivering out or mailing out whatever people want. These little kits for do-it-yourself, fun little evening where you can paint or put things together on that. So our team of females are doing that also. I think it's tonight, I believe, or next week, I guess. So that's another great way for brands to continually to connect to their customers, is getting away or collaborating. Maybe it's a wine, a winery or some type of thing with a do-it-yourself, getting people, or a coloring contest or things like that. The other thing, one thing that came up was, if anybody looked up sweetfarm.org, here's a local farm. It's in California. This is where you can have a goat come to your Zoom meeting, and they're also doing farm tours. It's a way that they came out of the box to try to raise money. I believe they're a nonprofit, but they have 20-minute virtual private tours, 10-minute corporate meeting cameos, where you can have a goat or a llama or something like that come to your meeting to kind of break it up. But it's really taken off, and I think they have a big waiting list now. So if you have a local agriculture, farm, some type of interesting bed and breakfast, you can see how you could come up with interesting ways to stay relevant. We are talking again about virtual tours. You know, how do we get our brand out there? Again, some of these are bigger picture, but you can search youvisit.com, I think /tour/Machu Picchu, but they have a whole bunch of interesting big pictures to kind of entice people that want to come there. And this kind of reminds us of how we would want to have, you know, the Zoom background that we can have, that people can actually download and be involved in it. We go to the next slide. Just a couple more things here. We're talking a lot about farmers market. Local events are really getting hit, along with sports is something, local sports and those things. So, you know, we're talking a lot about farmers markets. What's going to be the new social distancing rules? And so how far should we plan to be apart? So the discussions we're having is that start laying out different plans for your farmers markets or events that have social distancing guidelines, single entry and exit points, that you're controlling how much crowds can come in and out. How are farmers, how are they going to have to wear masks? I mean, how are we protecting each other? And I think this is how the summer could be. We're seeing ideas around social distancing campfires in local communities that they're wanting to put together when they can come back, where, you know, they can sit in a circle 6-10 feet apart, have discussions, but they're not on top of each other. And then social distancing tours, and really what that means is we're putting brown bag lunches together as people come into your community. And then when they come back, they can have their local cocktail picked up, you know, so they're not really engaging sitting at a bar, but they're actually engaging with your community and with your teams. What we're calling it more like social distancing tours, giving out maps, go check this out, kind of spreading them around the community in the area, but also making sure they're really engaged in your community and spending money. last slide here. So kind of recap, we're asking people to think differently about what this engagement looks like. This is a completely new plan. I mean, I think a lot of you talked about this as you were going through. I mean, we talked about, businesses are going to lead recovery, and the ones that are going to do it are the ones that are going to think differently and really think about what's going to happen as we go into the summer tourism season. How do we engage that work from home audience? Now more than ever, they're at home, right? They're with their families, their kids, they're bored to death, husband and wives, trying to figure out what they're going to do. That's where I said coloring books or things that they can engage and download and have a little contest. That's really the point that we're trying to do right now is get engaged with them. They're home, they want to do something, and they're more than apt to drive them online. Consider launching and managing those social distancing events when we do open, and what that might look like. And consider how you market virtual experiences. This is going to be kind of the weird new normal for this summer as we turn things back on. But again, we're looking at ways that we can bring visitors in to spend money and support our local businesses so we can start to ramp back up. And that's all I have, Bonnie. So I'll take any questions as we go through this. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk through these.
Great, thanks, Greg. That was a great presentation. So we do have one question here, and Matt, maybe this is a question that you can help us expand on. Carol's asked, there are many Colorado counties who have not been impacted as badly as the Front Range. Is it possible to get those people back to work? And I think maybe the larger, broader question here is, can you walk us through the four phase, I guess what's the word I'm looking for, the four phases that the president just put into play to help us open up the country again. Could you elaborate a little bit on what that looks like?
Interesting way to frame it. What we actually took out of the federal piece of the puzzle was to head back to the governor. And so really that's where we've been focused, is what's going to happen in state. I think that there are conversations that are occurring, and it's honestly, even as we're sitting right here, about the different states. One of the resources brought by the state epidemiologist today was a tracking by county and a tracking by county population, the number of cases, who's been hit harder, who's been hit less, and in some cases, who's just been tested more, who's been tested less. And so I think that there are definite conversations going as to, on a case-by-case basis, I should say, as to what businesses can open and where. I think that there is just something that came up that construction, bike shops, and something else are going to open in Aspen or in Pickens County this coming week. I know that our county commissioners actually have a conversation about construction this Monday. I do believe that they're tackling this holistically, but I think that there is progress, I should say, on this individual and case-by-case loosening. And speaking somewhat obviously out of my jurisdiction here, but on this case-by-case loosening of the stay-at-home and of certain business sectors. I am optimistic, depending on this report and update next week, that should we have done well against flattening the curve, that we'll see a pretty solid progression on that as we move forward. I think what's also happening, and certainly in our community, is that we're seeing a bubbling up of individual business sectors. So our construction sector, our outfitter sector, have already created their own smaller subgroups and created getting back to business plans. Like, how will they, under the current normal, I like to call it, of social distancing, masks, et cetera, find a way to get their business operating so that it fits within both the safety mandates by the feds and the state, but also the travel and business psyche of the consumer. And so everybody is working hard, and I think as that will bubble up, that we will see some of that occurring through the state, and hopefully eventually reach, broader actions that affect all the counties.
Great, thanks, Matt. Question here. So what if I'm a local hotel or Airbnb? Greg, do you have any ideas on how we can go virtual and generate any revenue and types of business like that, and any creative ways to do so?
Right now it is a challenge, and I guess I see like what we're trying to see is what we're trying to recommend is can you partner with anybody on this? And we with selling any kind of wares. A lot of times local bed and breakfast or Airbnbs, they will start to put together their own kind of cookbooks or something like that. I think it's hard to generate revenue right now for them, but what I'm asking or what we're recommending is to start creating, making sure your brand is front and center. So you kind of have that get back to business plan that I think Matt was talking about. And I think that's going to be the most important part. The revenue part right now is a really big challenge because, how are people going to spend money or support? One of the things we are seeing, the other thing we're doing is, people are putting out kind of this, support us, you're a past customer, would you like to buy a gift card? And, we have 20% off, we'll book your trip when you're ready, we'll send you a t-shirt, we'll give you something in return for starting to see some revenue come in for future bookings. And I think that's probably the one area you can start to consider if it works for them. But again, I would try to keep your brand front and center right now because as things turn back on, you want people to know you're still alive and you're still well and you're safe and you're ready for business.
Great, thanks, Greg. Darcy, a couple questions for you here from Lee, and it's a pretty broad question, but how will locals survive financially for the summer in Gunnison County or Crested Butte without tourism and second homeowners in the area? And a secondary question to that, does Gunnison County foresee a lot of lawsuits in response to closing the county?
Yeah, thanks. Lee, I'll try to answer this the best I can. I mean, I think we're all in the same boat. We don't know exactly how we're going to manage that, but we're going to do it and we're going to find a way through it and we're going to try to make sure no one's left behind. We'll see what we can do and how we can open in the next month or two. And there may be things we really try to do is play and stay local and go out to eat and do things, obviously not in a restaurant, but there's all kinds of creative talks about creating outdoor things that would meet the health order requirements. And we'll see what happens. It's not going to be easy, but we're going to do the best we can with what within the realm that we can. As far as the lawsuits go, no. People can try to sue Gunnison County, but everything that has been done by our health director has been done with thought and careful consideration of the laws and has been really respectful. She has saved lives here. I think Gunnison County is different from a lot of the Southwest communities in that we were one of the highest infection rates in the country for a while, and we have plateaued and we have saved lives because of her action. And, there's people that are upset with what has happened. And through this whole process, we make mistakes. We certainly aren't trying to discriminate. We love our second homeowners. We love our visitors. We need them, and they are a part of our family. It's because we are trying to protect them too. And everything that she has put forth and has been challenged has been upheld. And I'm not concerned, and I fully support the work that she's doing.
Great, thanks, Darcy. One last question here from Dina, and this is open to the whole panel. If there's anything that you're doing locally to implement this, or if we know of any state or federal initiatives, but is there anything coming down the pipeline to assist small landlords who are having to cover the costs of their tenants' utilities as well as rent assistance? Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? You can. Sorry, my audio, I thought just went out. So I think, Dina, I can kind of help take a crack at that question. We're not seeing anything from the state. The initiative to help landlords is really starting on a local level, especially, in Telluride, helping any kind of tenant with letters to landlords to help them ease that. But that's as much as I've seen in the local area. I don't know if anybody else in maybe Gunnison or in La Plata, if there's anything going on there, or if Matt, if you know of anything from the state level if there's any kind of initiative to help landlords.
This is Greg also. I think the only thing I've heard is every local community seems to be working from some type of local taxes or property taxes. So I know Grand Junction has some initiatives. So I guess what I would say, like we talked, one of the speakers, I think it might have been Tim, talking about, lean on your local government, local chamber, and start asking those questions and see what's available to you to help support with utilities, and if there is kind of like relief for that for rent. And I think hopefully we'll see something come down from the feds, but I would start to ask that question locally.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Greg. So I'm going to stop Q&A here. I just have a couple of things as we wrap up here today. We understand that with PPP and Int'l being exhausted, that there's a huge need for alternative funding sources. And OEdit has done something really phenomenal. They are constructing basically a library of alternative funding sources in the state of Colorado. And I'm going to actually screen share here really quick because I would really like to show everyone this. I'm going to share this link here. Emily, I'm going to have you stop screen sharing real quick. Hang on just a second. So OEdit's put together a list of alternative funding sources. And, we really understand that not everybody's getting PPP. They're not, qualifying for Int'l and whatnot. And so they've put together a list, and this is about 25% built out right now, but you can see they've done a really fantastic job here on the left-hand side. You can see they've put in funding types, and it's everything from deferring payments with your local bank. You see that we have grant assistance in here as well. And then we have several loan options closer to the bottom. There's hundreds of entries now. But it's a really great list for people to go and look and say, okay, what industry am I in here? And what no tool like this, so it's the first one to do it, but it's a very powerful tool because they're essentially sourcing all of the alternative funding and putting it in one place for you. So I just wanted to point that out and have you take a look at it. So I'm sending a lot of people to this resource right now. Again, it's about 25–30% built out, but they're working diligently on building this entire resource out at this point. For example, Greenline Ventures just put up an emergency loan program, and the eligibility for it is for anyone who has shown evidence of impact of COVID, but it's for women and veterans based in the state of Colorado that have fewer than 50 employees, full-time employees in their company. So there's a lot of really incredible things coming out of that alternative funding list. So I really urge you to take a look at it. That we're going to post that on our Facebook page, and I'm also going to include that in the follow-up email after this Zoom call today, so you can access that. Emily, if you want to share your screen again, I just wanted to point that out to everybody. And then with that, perfect, thank you. With that being said, I'm going to put all of the information that we've talked about today in our follow-up email. Again, that email will be coming from MailChimp, and I realize that that is landing in a lot of spam folders. So I just urge you to go out there into your spam folder and take a peek for our MailChimp. Please, go ahead and visit the Facebook page. I'm very diligent on keeping that updated with the recording of this call, with future Zoom invites as well, with additional resources, and keeping you up to date there. And then in that email as well, we will be including the Google Drive link, so you can access all of the resources that we've been discussing today as well. With that being said, I'm going to give you your afternoon back, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and happy Friday to you. And we will see you next week, same time at 12 o'clock for our Southwest resource update for business owners. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.